Today, we are putting on our digital press badge and stepping into newsrooms all around the globe
Yeah,
because we are talking about artificial intelligence.
we are. And it's a technology that, promises all this efficiency and sustainability, yet at the same time, it introduces these incredible, almost existential risks to the very foundation of journalism.
Right.
And we're really trying to move beyond the general anxieties about AI, that vague fear of robots taking over, and really drill down on the concrete steps newsrooms have to take, like right now, to manage the critical risk of accuracy failures, deep-seated factual errors, and, crucially, the erosion of public trust that happens when these AI systems just hallucinate,
Hallucinate, that's the key word.
when they just make up facts out of thin air.
That is the perfect mission statement for this deep dive. Our goal isn't just to understand what the risks are. I mean, let's be honest, we've all heard that AI can make mistakes, but to identify that detailed prescriptive roadmap, the one that's required for responsible AI adoption. This is about governance, it's about strategy, it's really about preservation of the craft itself.
And to do that, we didn't just pull from one corner of the journalism world. We leveraged a really powerful stack of sources, including some foundational guidance from the Partnership on AI, or the PAI, which lays out this fantastic 10-step strategic roadmap.
Okay.
We also synthesize global journalistic perspectives, drawing really heavily from a comprehensive Thomson Reuters Foundation survey, and that one focused intensely on the unique challenges and the adoption rates in the global south and emerging economies.
It's a perspective we don't always get.
Not at all. And finally, we ground this whole discussion in reality by looking at key legal rulings on AI content and copyright, specifically to understand the liability risks, because they are very real.
And to understand the urgency here, we have to start with a shock statistic that really grounds this whole discussion. This is not some hypothetical threat for 2030. The Thomson Reuters Foundation survey revealed that usage is already massive. Over 80%, 81.7% to be specific, of journalists surveyed globally are already using AI tools in their work.
And if that doesn't capture the scale of this revolution, think about this. Almost half of them, 49.4%, are using these tools every single day.
Every day.
That sets the immediate stage for why strict governance and clear guidelines aren't just, good practices. They are an absolute immediate necessity if the news industry wants to preserve its credibility, its legal standing, and its very relationship with its audience.
Okay, so let's unpack that adoption rate because, like you said, it's particularly pronounced in areas that don't always dominate the U.S. or Western European media headlines.
That's exactly right. The high frequency of AI usage, that 81.7% figure, is particularly strong among journalists in the global south and emerging economies. You have to remember these newsrooms often operate with much smaller budgets, tighter deadlines, so they see AI as this crucial, almost non-negotiable tool for efficiency, for sustainability, for just competitive survival.
So for them, it's not some experimental luxury.
Not at all. It's a necessity. And you can see exactly why when you look at the specific use cases. The deployment of AI cuts right across the entire news production cycle, and it's well beyond just simple grammar checks.
Right.
We're seeing a significant portion, 55.3%, using it for improving content. Things like complex editing, summarizing really long documents, reformatting existing content for different platforms.
And over half for translation.
Yes, 51.8% are utilizing it for translation services.
And translation is just an enormous value add, especially for newsrooms, trying to serve these diverse, multilingual, local populations where manually translating key documents or interviews between dialects would just take hours. That is immediate, tangible time saved right there.
It is. And beyond pure text manipulation, nearly half are using it for research and inspiration. That's 48.8%. This is about using large language models to quickly summarize background info, find trends in huge data sets, or even suggest angles for a story.
And data analysis is right behind that.
It is at 42.9%, which is so critical for investigative reporting.
And here's the one that I find maybe the most unsettling. 37.6% are using AI tools for fact-checking.
And that is the double-edged sword right there, isn't it?
It really is.
You have AI being deployed to assist with fact-checking, while at the same time being the core technology that's responsible for generating the very misinformation, the bias, or the outright hallucinated facts it's supposed to be catching.
So this is really where the governance conversation has to begin.
Absolutely. But before we dive into all the risks, we have to acknowledge the power of that efficiency argument because that's what's driving all of this. It's the primary incentive.
Yeah.
And the sources give us these fantastic specific anecdotes showing the direct impact on reporters' daily lives. Let's look at the Brainerd Dispatch in the US, for instance.
Okay.
It's just a powerful illustration of the resource crunch. The editor there, Renee Richardson, she observed that newsrooms perpetually ask their staff to do more. More social media, more video, more podcasts, more engagement,
All the mores.
all the mores. And yet they rarely give them time back to actually do the core job of reporting.
Yeah.
The administrative burdens just pile up and up.
So the Brainerd Dispatch strategically identified this repetitive, pretty low-value task, writing police public safety announcements, which are essentially just automated daily crime blotters.
Exactly. And so now they are building an AI program specifically to automate the creation and publication of these repetitive updates. The goal isn't to replace the reporter. The goal is to liberate them. That automation is intended to give news staff hours back every single week time that they can then devote to actual, complex, human-led reporting. Investigative work, community engagement, the stuff that machines simply cannot handle.
And we see a similar story, maybe on a bigger scale, with Michigan Radio, WUOM-FM. Their reporters were facing this just daunting task of covering the transcripts for city council and subcommittee meetings across more than 40 different jurisdictions.
Just think about that workflow before AI. I mean, a reporter would either have to physically sit through endless, tedious hours of meetings, or they'd have to pay for slow, really expensive manual transcription services.
So now they're deploying AI transcription tools.
Right, and the time savings are revolutionary. As one reporter noted, it lets them monitor and cover a lot more ground for their audience than they ever could by sitting through hours and hours of public meetings manually.
But, and this is a crucial caveat that the sources emphasize, those transcriptions are never perfect.
Never. They might mangle proper nouns, they misinterpret overlapping speech, or they struggle with really complex terminology.
So the output absolutely requires human review for accuracy and context.
It has to. But it provides that starting point, the 80% solution, that frees up human talent to focus on the 20% that actually matters. The analysis, the verification, and the follow-up reporting.
And this efficiency is exactly why more than half of the surveyed journalists, 52.4%, reported that AI has impacted their work to a large or great extent in just the last 18 months alone.
It's a rapid transformative shift.
But this rapid adoption has immediately brought these fundamental concerns bubbling right to the surface, and these concerns are shared even by the most active AI users. The long-term risks they identified show this profound anxiety about the core tenets of their own profession. They're worried about their identity as journalists.
It's the paradox of necessity meeting anxiety, right? The top long-term risk listed by journalists surveyed was the loss of creativity and original reporting. That was cited by 54.3%.
They worry that if the machine handles the summary, the journalist loses the creative muscle memory of shaping the story themselves.
Exactly. And right behind that, 51.4% worried about the erosion of critical thinking skills. If you are constantly fed pre-digested facts or summaries by an AI, do you forget how to do the hard work of verifying and connecting sources on your own?
And then, directly related to our core topic today, 49% feared the risk of increased misinformation.
That's the ultimate irony. They use the tool for efficiency, fully knowing the tool could be a vector for undermining their profession's trustworthiness. The data shows this stark ethical divide.
8 out of 10 journalists are using AI to get more efficient.
And yet 53.4% of them express high levels of ethical worries about AI's impact on the industry.
It's like ordering a pizza while you're simultaneously writing an expose on how much you hate delivery services.
That's a great way to put it. They need the efficiency for sustainability, but they are critically aware that the tools they're using could fundamentally compromise their quality and their ethics if they aren't governed by strict, human-centric policies. And this brings us squarely to the central challenge, which is really the core subject of our deep dive today. The risk of AI hallucination and how these errors become published fact.
Right.
When a generative AI model is tasked with creating content, whether it's a news summary, a transcription, or a data-driven short article, the mistakes it makes are not simple editorial oversights. They are fundamental factual errors, sometimes invented citations or totally made-up quotes that can just instantaneously damage credibility.
So let's focus on those content creation tools first, because this is the category where the mistakes directly translate into published misinformation. The Partnership on AI, the PAI guidance, it pinpoints two major risks here. The first one deals with data errors.
And this is the danger of scale. If newsrooms rely on automated systems to handle data, maybe pulling figures from a public database into an internal template, errors in that auto-populated data, even tiny localized input mistakes, can result in much larger catastrophic errors.
When that data is then automatically woven into a published article that reaches thousands of readers,
The mistake is amplified instantly.
and the second risk relates to what's called the context vacuum. Automated reporting is fast, but it often operates without the benefit of human judgment, which provides that essential context.
So if the AI is programmed to just report X happened and Y resulted, it might skip the crucial details about why X happened or the social context surrounding Y.
And the consequence of that context vacuum is, well, it's massive for the audience. By giving an incomplete or sort of disjointed picture, news organizations are inadvertently spreading misinformation, even if the isolated facts they present are technically correct.
And then the readers, in their attempt to make sense of the story, will inevitably fill in the gaps in the reporting using their own preconceived notions or biases.
Compounding the inaccurate narrative with personal speculation.
Precisely. And of course, we have to address the most acute form of deception that's facilitated by generative AI deepfakes.
Yes.
Generative AI fundamentally makes the job of spreading false information and disinformation easier, faster, and way more convincing.
It does this by creating highly realistic, altered content, words, photos, video, audio, that all appears authentic.
These are deepfakes, and they erode the audience's ability to discern what constitutes real footage or authentic documentation of an event or a genuine quote. When content is generated this way, journalists have to treat it with extreme, sustained skepticism. They have to conduct thorough due diligence to avoid accidentally using non-authentic material.
But the challenge of inaccuracy goes beyond just simple, isolated mistakes, doesn't it? It moves into the realm of systemic unfairness, what we're calling the bias amplification effect.
This is a major structural concern, and it was particularly highlighted by the journalists we saw surveyed in emerging economies. AI bias is insidious because it often starts with the training data itself.
Right. Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. If the data used to train the algorithm reflects societal prejudices or historical inequalities or unbalanced information, the resulting model will inevitably perpetuate those biases. And that leads directly to unfair, skewed, or inaccurate reporting when those models are deployed.
And for journalists operating in the global south or emerging economies, there's this specific, really crippling technological barrier. Most of the large AI models are primarily trained on English language data, and it's largely sourced from Western contexts and platforms.
Which means that the resulting AI tools may struggle significantly with local languages, specific dialects, or critical cultural context. For instance, a model might fail to recognize local political slang, or it might misinterpret the nuances of a cultural reference.
Or entirely overlook the importance of a local specific name or law.
And if the model can't grasp those local details, it limits the tool's usefulness, and it severely compromises its accuracy in that region. Even worse, it forces the local journalist to rely on a tool that inherently biases towards a Western worldview.
Which undermines the very thing that is often their newsroom's biggest value proposition, their local focus and their core commitment to their community.
And this all ties back to that fear of the erosion of critical thinking skills. It's not just about losing the ability to write a creative feature, it's about losing a fundamental journalistic capability.
The fear is that the ability to fact-check, to verify sources, to conduct that critical, in-depth analysis will diminish if journalists start viewing the AI as some magical box that just spits out verified, plausible-sounding text.
If we start treating AI output like a verified source, then we've lost the battle. The sources are absolutely crystal clear on this point. Human responsibility never evaporates.
Yeah, I think the editor from Malawi stated it really plainly. He said, journalists must always fact-check, apply ethics, and rigorously verify what AI presents.
And this is non-negotiable, because the ultimate accountability rests with the human. When a factual error or a hallucinated fact gets published, the ultimate responsibility for the material, even if an AI prepared it, lies squarely with the journalist who hit publish and the editorial office that approved it.
So this mandatory, non-transferable human verification is really the only defense the newsroom has against the cost of inaccuracy.
Yeah.
So given the urgency of these risks, I mean, the factual errors, the deepfakes, the biased reporting, you would assume that newsrooms are deploying these rigorous, comprehensive policies right now.
You would assume that.
But the data reveals a shocking reality. We have a policy gap crisis of, well, epic proportions.
It is a staggering failure of institutional preparation to match the speed of adoption. The Thomson Reuters Foundation survey revealed that only a tiny fraction of participants, just 13%, reported having an official, explicit AI policy in their workplace.
13%. And conversely, nearly 80%, 79.1% to be precise, have absolutely no clear written guidelines in place.
So when journalists are using these powerful, error-prone tools every single day, but 8 out of 10 newsrooms have no defined playbook, that isn't just risky. That's a recipe for chaos, inconsistent application, and inevitable misuse.
And what's filling that massive policy hole?
Basically, journalists are figuring it out for themselves. A majority of AI users, 57.6%, are self-taught, often leveraging online courses and external guides.
And while that shows great initiative and adaptability on the part of the individual,
Right.
it means AI implementation is just wildly inconsistent across the newsroom, which multiplies the potential for ethical lapses or accidental misuse that's driven by a lack of an institutional standard.
And this is precisely why the Partnership on AI's Guidance, the PII framework, is so vital. It offers the foundational guardrails needed to stabilize this whole situation. They identify 5 key pillars that should anchor any newsroom strategy.
Moving from abstract values to concrete daily practice.
Let's look at the ones that are most essential for mitigating inaccuracy and rebuilding trust. The first principle is that the technology has to embody the standards and values of the news operation. You just can't outsource integrity.
Right.
The AI tool has to reflect the newsroom's commitment to transparency, to accountability, and to ethical reporting.
So if the newsroom values non-discrimination in its coverage of local government, the AI they choose must be tested to ensure it doesn't amplify bias in reporting on minority groups.
Exactly.
And if they value absolute factual accuracy, the tool needs a strong, documented performance record against error rates.
Exactly. And principle 2 is critical. Newsroom staff need to actively supervise AI tools. They cannot just be treated as plug-and-play automation. This requires establishing clear lines of authority for auditing, for monitoring, and for verification.
And principle 3 demands mechanisms for transparency, explainability, and accountability must accompany the implementation.
And that's difficult because, unlike traditional software, AI often arrives at its decisions or results without explicit, traceable programming steps. But you still have to be able to explain, even if it's broadly, how the system arrived at its conclusion to maintain credibility.
Which leads us to the central, non-negotiable mitigator: human oversight. Why does human decision-making have to remain so central to this entire process?
Because the outputs of AI, particularly generative AI, are just not inherently reliable, and they lack critical human attributes like empathy and contextual understanding. Human judgment is required to evaluate their sensitivity, their social significance, and their potential impact on vulnerable populations.
So human decision-making has to remain central, not just to long-term strategies, but to daily editorial tasks, especially for anything touching sensitive topics, things like national security, defense interests, or emotionally charged community stories.
I think an editor from the Philippines noted that machines inherently lack the nuanced contextual understanding that is essential for ethical, responsible reporting in a complex world. They just don't get it.
So if journalists can't trust the AI implicitly, what are the specific mandatory steps they should be taking with AI-generated content? How do we prevent the hallucination from becoming a front-page headline?
Well, the guidance is clear and it's mandatory. Specific verification steps must be taken. When you're dealing with AI-generated text or images, the journalist must first check whether the content clearly and accurately reflects reality.
Does it refer to available and reliable human sources? Is the information up to date and correctly situated within the context of the story?
And in the age of deepfakes, they have to rigorously check for originality and authenticity to counteract altered media. Our sources mention specific tools journalists are advised to use for this, things like Sentinel, Fake Catcher, Weaverify, or Microsoft's Video Authenticator tool.
So using these authentication tools is rapidly becoming as foundational to reporting as, I don't know, checking the metadata on a photograph once was.
I think that's a perfect analogy, because remember, that accountability line is crystal clear. Accountability lies with the author and the editorial office, even if AI was used.
Which means every single result from generative AI requires mandatory, documented human verification before it is published.
And if a journalist has any doubt about the material's authenticity or its accuracy, the instruction is simple. Do not use it, period.
So once that content is verified and cleared by the human in the loop, We move to the final governance step, transparency and labeling. This seems like the only way to rebuild and maintain audience trust that might be shattered by a single high-profile AI failure.
Disclosure is the absolute key to ethical adoption. Any use of AI that affects the collection, the production, the processing, or the distribution of content should be clearly marked and communicated to the reader. The principle is really simple.
If the AI touched the content the audience sees or reads, they need to know about it.
They need to know.
So what are the best, most effective practices for disclosure? Is a little AI-used footnote at the bottom enough?
A simple footnote is, the bare minimum. But news outlets are encouraged to go much further to truly demonstrate transparency. Recommended labeling methods include watermarks on visual media, clear labels, or captions like material generated using artificial intelligence.
But the most effective approach is providing a sidebar on online platforms with detailed data.
Yes, and that data needs to be specific.
Data on what exactly?
Data on the system used. Was it a proprietary internal model or an external large language model? Data on the specific purpose. Was it used for translation, summarization, or fact-checking assistance? And data on the methods that were utilized.
And this level of transparency maintains deep credibility. It anticipates audience questions and ensures they aren't caught off guard should they later discover the content wasn't purely human-generated.
Exactly. And this high standard of disclosure applies even to back-end functions. For instance, the New York Times openly shares how they are using machine learning to determine their paywall strategy, just for the purpose of being fully transparent with their audience about their operational decisions. The sheer complexity of AI and the constant dynamic nature of the risks we've just discussed, from hallucination to bias, it means that adoption cannot be haphazard. The policy gap crisis we noted proves that reacting to AI just isn't enough. Newsrooms need a proactive strategy.
And that's exactly where the partnership on AI's 10-step guide comes in. It provides an intentional, stepwise approach that's necessary to manage the entire life cycle of this technology, moving from the initial concept all the way to its eventual retirement. It's a comprehensive strategic roadmap that newsrooms are desperately missing.
And it starts right where that policy gap is widest, determining a purpose before you even procure a tool. That's step one. Identify the clear outcomes and objectives of adding an AI tool.
So you have to ask, are we doing this for efficiency, for sustainability, for faster news production, or audience engagement?
You have to identify a clear business case before you even look at a vendor. The goal is to ensure the technology is addressing a verified existing problem, not just creating new layers of technological complexity.
And then you have to figure out where this new, potentially risky tech actually fits into the existing workflow.
That's step two. Mapping the tools fit into your existing news production cycle. Where will it be added, and which human journalist will be verifying the output? This forces the newsroom to plan for human oversight right from the beginning.
And then step three is pinpointing the specific category of tools you are considering. Is it a content creation tool, a research tool, a distribution tool?
Right. And understanding the unique associated risks, especially those content creation risks we detailed earlier, like the context vacuum and the data errors.
So once they know the risks in the workflow, how do they assess the technology itself?
That's step four. Evaluate the tool. And this involves due diligence on the vendor, transparency in their operations, and their approach to minimizing bias. You need to ask, does this company adhere to the ethical principles we defined back in step one? This is a crucial, often skipped step.
And AI doesn't just impact technology, it impacts people. How do they handle the inevitable friction and anxiety among the staff?
That is step five. Gather input from staff and stakeholders. AI changes roles, it potentially reduces staffing needs, and it generates fear. Newsroom leadership has to actively seek feedback from the journalists, editors, and technical staff who will actually be using the tool.
To ensure the implementation strategy is addressing concerns about job security, training needs, and those ethical worries we talked about.
Exactly. A tool that's adopted without staff buy-in is a tool that's doomed to be misused or just flat out ignored.
Steps 6 and 7 then move into implementation planning and a final cost-benefit analysis.
Step 6 is the design and integration phase. And this means designing the workflow to mandate human verification protocols, ensuring the human is truly in the loop before content goes out.
And step 7 is crucial, the final benefit and drawback assessment. This is where newsrooms conduct a hard-nosed check on every potential negative impact.
It is, and the PAI guidance includes a really crucial checkpoint early in this process, warning against what they call technological path dependency.
Right. Can you explain that?
Yes. If you go through steps 6 and 7 and find that none of the shortlisted tools truly meet your needs or your responsible AI standards, the guidance stresses hold off on adopting an AI tool.
Don't just pick the least bad option.
Right. News organizations are explicitly warned against this technological path dependency. It's a psychological phenomenon where organizations continue using a suboptimal tool simply because they've already invested significant money, time, and training hours in adopting it.
Can you give us a concrete example of that kind of dependency in a newsroom?
Sure. Imagine a newsroom in, say, Southeast Asia that spent 6 months and thousands of dollars integrating an expensive Western-trained AI translation tool. Then they discover that while the tool handles standard French and English perfectly, it struggles terribly with local dialects and cultural slang.
So it's constantly misinterpreting public official quotes or community sentiment.
Exactly. Switching now means admitting the initial investment was a sunk cost, retraining staff, and spending more money. Past dependency pressures the leadership to keep the suboptimal bias tool, thereby compromising the quality of local reporting rather than just absorbing the financial loss.
That fear of admitting a mistake can lead to systemic failures down the line.
Absolutely. And step 7 demands a thorough vetting of potential negative impacts. How might this tool negatively affect audience privacy by collecting unnecessary data? How might it inadvertently reduce audience autonomy by narrowing the diversity of news they see?
And leadership has to ask, do promises in the marketing language for this tool or product go beyond what is realistically achievable by the state of the art? You have to align expectations with reality.
Then step 8 is about making sure the people using the tools actually know how to use them responsibly. That's the required training and staff support.
And since we saw nearly 60% of journalists are self-taught, this step mandates formal, continuous training focused not just on functionality, but on ethical deployment, recognizing bias, and rigorous verification techniques.
And responsible stewardship requires knowing that AI tools are not static. They change, they update, they evolve. And that's what steps 9 and 10 address.
Okay.
Step 9 involves ongoing auditing and performance monitoring. Because AI behavior and outputs can change over time as developers update models or as they incorporate new data inputs, the designated oversight person in the newsroom has to monitor developer updates.
Including those lengthy emails with the fine print.
Especially those. They need to look for buried information about how the collection or use of data has changed, which could immediately implicate the newsroom's ethical or legal standing.
And step 10 is the final check, knowing when to pull the plug.
You have to define the criteria for retirement. You determine when you should retire an AI tool if the intended goals are no longer being met, if new ethical or bias concerns arise that cannot be mitigated, or if the cost-benefit analysis just no longer makes sense. Being proactive and transparent about retiring a tool demonstrates credibility and commitment to accuracy.
Okay, so moving beyond the roadmap for adoption, the PAI guide also emphasizes the importance of measuring efficacy beyond what they correctly call vanity metrics.
Right. We're also accustomed to seeing likes, shares, or page views as measurements of success. But these are surface-level, easily obtainable metrics that do not provide an accurate portrayal of the return on investment from using AI in a journalistic context. They tell you nothing about accuracy.
So to truly measure if an AI implementation is successful and responsible, newsrooms need to track 4 highly technical key performance areas. Let's break these down clearly, starting with accuracy.
First, accuracy is the simplest one. It's how well the tool performs its intended function without errors. If an article writing tool is supposed to summarize court filings, accuracy measures how often that summary is correct and factually sound.
Okay, simple enough. Second, we have precision. This is where we need to move beyond the jargon.
Let's think of it this way. Precision measures the rate of false positives versus true positives. So let's say the AI is tasked with analyzing thousands of internal emails to find evidence of city council corruption.
Okay.
If the AI flags 100 emails as relevant, but only 20 of those emails actually discuss corruption, that's low precision. Precision asks, of the results the AI returned, how many were actually correct and relevant to my query? A high-precision tool saves human time by only flagging highly relevant information.
And the third key metric is recall. How does that differ from precision?
So, recall measures the rate of false negatives, to use that corruption example again. If there are actually 50 emails total that discuss corruption in the database, but the AI only flags 20 of them, the recall is low. Recall asks, did the AI find all the relevant information in the database? High recall is essential for investigative journalism, where missing one key document could fundamentally undermine the entire story. You need both high precision and high recall for a truly effective tool.
And finally, they need to track efficiency and cost effectiveness.
Yes. Measuring the actual time savings, the hours freed up for the human journalist, and whether the direct and indirect costs, including training and oversight, are justified by those time savings. These four metrics together give you that holistic picture of the tool's performance and its ethical compliance.
Now let's pivot to the final looming strategic risk that every editor-in-chief needs to be worrying about, the intellectual property minefield. Newsrooms aren't just worried about their internal use of AI.
No.
They're worried about being sued for using or training AI on copyrighted material.
And this represents a massive legal liability that many organizations are still, I think, underestimating. AI systems are fundamentally trained by making copies, often unauthorized copies of vast amounts of data that's scraped from the internet. Articles, images, other published content.
And so copyright owners, authors, artists, and crucially other publishers are filing lawsuits claiming infringement of their exclusive right to make reproductions.
This isn't theoretical at all. We have a perfect, concrete example of this legal risk in the landmark case of Thomson Reuters v. RS Intelligence. What did that ruling establish that is so frightening for AI developers and users?
So this case involved RSS, an AI legal research tool. And RSS was found to have improperly used these short summaries, known as head notes, from Thomson Reuters' Westlaw Legal Research Service to train its AI model.
And the court granted summary judgment for Thomson Reuters on direct copyright infringement for at least some of those endnotes, confirming that the unauthorized copying for the purpose of training an AI model can indeed constitute infringement.
And the ruling hinged heavily on whether RSS could successfully deploy the fair use defense, which is the standard legal protection for using copyrighted material without permission. So how did the court break down the four fair use factors?
Well, the fair use analysis is complex, but the court found that two of the most important factors decisively favored Thomson Reuters. For the first factor, the purpose and character of the use, the court analyzed whether the use was transformative. RSS argued that using the text to train a neural network was transformative.
And the court disagreed.
It did, yes. The court found that RS's use was commercial and fundamentally non-transformative. RS was creating a competing legal research tool, and the AI was essentially replicating the function and content of Westlaw's summaries.
So the court ruled that copying material merely to train a competing commercial product without adding new expression, meaning, or purpose does not qualify as transformative use.
And that sets a very serious precedent for how training data is sourced and copied.
And the fourth factor, the effect of the use upon the potential market for the copyrighted work, is often considered the most important one.
It was crucial here. The court examined the likely effect of RSS copying on the market for Westlaw's product. Since RSS intended to compete directly with Westlaw, offering a similar service based on Westlaw's foundational summaries, the court concluded that RS's use heavily impacted and threatened the market for Thomson Reuters' original copyrighted work.
So because the AI company could have developed its product without infringing the copyrights, this factor decisively weighed against fair use.
It did. And this sends a chilling message not just to AI developers, but to the newsrooms that use AI products.
Absolutely. The legal liability warning is severe, and it affects the user.
Both the AI company and the AI user could potentially be liable for infringing outputs if, for example, the AI generated content that was substantially similar to a copyrighted source and they published it.
So journalists have to be intensely aware of the training data sources of the tools they use and ensure the originality of the output.
Because their use of an infringing AI result could land their editorial office in a massive legal battle. Using a tool responsibly means ensuring it is legally sourced. #outro.
This entire deep dive brings us back to that central critical tension that really has to define the future of journalism. AI offers these undeniable efficiency and sustainability gains, but it is a tool that requires constant, vigilant, and legally informed supervision.
That is the core non-transferable takeaway. AI is essential for the future of efficiency, but it absolutely cannot replace human editorial judgment, especially when you're facing the risks of misinformation, bias, factual hallucination, and legal exposure.
Right.
The fundamental job of the journalist is, and always will be, verification. If you don't fact-check the output, you aren't a journalist. You're just an assembly line manager.
So the actionable insight for every journalist and editor listening is the need for what one source called AI mastery over fear. Journalists have to proactively seek training, understand the PII roadmap, and advocate for clear newsroom guidelines that enforce rigorous human oversight and total transparency. That policy vacuum we saw, the 80% lack of guidelines, is simply unsustainable for a credible industry.
We need to see AI as a partner, not a replacement. And given the capacity for generative AI to create content that perfectly imitates real events or people, which means we should always prefer authentic footage and original documentation, we are left with a final provocative thought for you to consider as you wrap up this deep dive.
Given the tools now exist for comprehensive digital authentication, like those major news agencies have implemented to include verifiable information about a piece of content's origin and modification history in its metadata, how much responsibility do individual journalists and newsrooms bear to mandate the use of these tools? Is it now an ethical failing not to use authentication methods, thereby actively safeguarding the last bastion of trust in the digital age?
The technology exists to prove your content is real and was not hallucinated. The decision to use it and the policy to mandate its use rests squarely with the human in the loop.